The orders, we'll start with the pledge. We'll start with roll call attendance for those present. Please, Marty.
Mary Jo Rosanowski.
Here.
Mary Jo Radcliffe.
Here.
Tom Epps.
Here.
Troy Webb.
Here.
Amy Huffman. Here. Ann Deemer.
Here.
Brad Dodds.
Here.
Thank you. I want to thank all the community members and especially the school staff on making all these adjustments to make this meeting happen at a short notice in the theater here. So it's appreciation to everybody, and thank you for coming. I make the motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Has the meeting been verified according to open meeting laws?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I make the motion to move 8.2, the minor construction bids, to the front of the meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Is Myron ready to go?
Jill, how will the audio come through? Do I need the microphone right by the computer?
Yeah, it's only going to come through my computer here.
Okay.
I don't see.
Down here.
Do we have the sign up with the subject areas completed?
They're printing it right now.
Okay, thank you. Should we just go on to
Give some grants.
okay, while we wait for Myron to get hooked up here, we'll go to our gifts and grants. Dr. Stevenson.
Okay, so we are very excited to accept a number of grants tonight. We were very pleased to receive a second round of our mental health navigator grant at the tune of $75,000 for the next 2 years. This is our second grant cycle, and this very much supports the work that Amy Hunter is doing. We were really excited that she fired up lots of providers happening in school. Just to reiterate for everyone, a large part of the mental health grant is her navigation services, which means she helps families who are trying to get services for their children. She helps them navigate that messy process of insurance and referrals, and we have chosen as a district to remove the barrier of the parent having to take off of work to come pick their child up and bring them to the appointment, but instead provide those appointments here in the district. It is a relationship with the family and the provider. We are out once they are connected. We are no part of that services that are being provided. Already this school year, she has 16 students and therapists that have been connected through her navigation services. And so coming back from a pandemic, I think we can all agree that there's an awful lot of needs for an awful lot of people. And so we're really excited that we have that grant available again to continue her work. Additionally, we received $15,000 for AODA work. That's a long-standing grant that the district has been very pleased to receive for a number of years. And we work in large part with the UW Extension Office on much of our AODA grant programming. And so we're excited to have that as well. And finally, certainly not to be forgotten, a very generous family has donated a cornet to the middle school band program. Teresa and Eric Tyson have donated their cornet so that a beginning band student will have an instrument to use without having to rent one, and that's valued at about $200. So asking for approval on the 2 grants and the gift.
I'll make the motion to approval. I'll second.
There's been a motion, a second. Are there any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Do we have Myron hooked up? Okay, we're ready to go with the Myron bids.
hear us?
I can hear you now.
Perfect. I'm going to try to move my microphone. Can you try talking again?
Okay, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you so much. So Jill is going to put the documents up on the screen. And just for the board's information, remember that you have already, just to summarize where we're at in this process, this is that next round of bid package from our 2020 successful referendum, in which we, this summer, already did the boiler. We just did the groundbreaking for the two larger projects at Forest Street and at the high school, and there were a few contractors that they needed to do some additional digging after that bid opening day. We did a little mini celebration after that initial bid opening day because we came in to our project at or under budget, and they needed to do a little bit more investigating. So the items that were marked with the orange check mark in your documents are the ones that still need approval from the board today. So, David, with that, is there background information you'd like to share with us?
No, I think you hit the highlights, Kelly. We were in a hurry to try and get that first round, for approval, because those were the critical long lead items and the contractors that were going to be on site right away. And we were pretty confident that the scopes were solid, so we got those out. Like you had mentioned, these other contractors, there's maybe some gray areas yet that Keith wanted to kind of dig through and make sure we had it right before we went ahead and made the award. We're confident in all the numbers now, and we're confident in our guaranteed maximum price with the district on both projects. So that's kind of the document that we are going to for approval for signatures, so we can kind of put a bow on that aspect of things. And then, just as a reminder, the only remaining things we would have moving forward is the middle school chiller project, which bids are due in a week for that. And again, we're kind of factoring that into our overall referendum budget currently. So we're, like Kelly mentioned, we're right at budget basically. So that's all good, as long as that bid comes in at or below where the original, the prior bid had been. And then the steam to hot water conversion project at the high school is wrapping up. We're just going to get through the commissioning here in the coming weeks, and so that first phase of all of our projects will be wrapped up. So on these two here, again, I don't have the document up. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but essentially, Jill,
it's up on the big screen.
Yeah.
Did the board members have any questions about any of the highlighted areas? I don't think so, David, so I think they are ready. If there are no questions, I think we're ready for a motion.
Is there a motion to accept the bids, the construction bids? So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carried. Do we have the results?
So we would need to move items 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 7.2, all need to move to after our, after item 9. So again, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, and 7.2 all need to move until after public comment. David Keating, thank you so much. You are free to spend your night as you wish.
Thank you. Okay, we received the items that public comment are signed up for, and Amy's made a motion to move those items to the end here. Brad, second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carried. We'll move on to employment recommendations. You received that report in your packet. Any questions on employment recommendations?
Are all of our positions full now?
We have a couple of support staff positions that we are still looking for, but the other positions have all been filled, yes.
Is there a motion to approve the employment recommendations?
I so move.
I'll make a second.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Before we get off the Our People pillar, I put a document in the board's packet for your information. I just wanted to speak to that a little bit. There was an Instructional Coaching Summit conference that was happening, and I just wanted to highlight that this is Tony Berger. He's been a phenomenal teacher in our district for many years, but this is his first year taking on that role of instructional coach, and there's already a conference happening, and he is, I think, the perfect marriage between his past social studies world and his instructional coaching world, and he, it already happened now because this was earlier's agenda, but he actually facilitated a roundtable discussion talking about culture responsive practices and instructional coaching, and so we're just very proud of him for jumping into that new role and already taking some leadership opportunities within that.
Thank you.
Dr. Severson, can you just mute your Zoom right now, or your microphone? Thank you.
I'll get all the technical things worked out here. Okay, next we have Orton Gillingham Professional Development, Vicki Kramer and Dr. Sullivan. Thank you.
So my name is Nicole Sullivan, I'm the director. Can you hear me?
You have to turn it on. I don't think it was on. Push the button on top.
Test.
Did you hear the light one? Push and hold, and you should get some. We hand it to me. Yep.
Thank you for that, Dr. Severson. My name is Nicole Sullivan, and I'm the Director of Personal Instruction here in Black River Falls School District, and I'm joined here today with the fabulous Vicki Kramer, who is our district's reading specialist. And we are excited to have the opportunity tonight to address you all about some of the excellent work being done by our school district's teachers. In your board packet, you will find a handout with information about the Orton Gillingham program. The Orton Gillingham handout has some information about what the program is, the research base, and the number of teachers who have participated in the professional development from the Black River Falls School District. The Orton Gillingham approach to reading instruction has been around for a long time. The approach was first developed specifically to be used with anyone who has a language-based learning disability like dyslexia. However, it can be used effectively with readers who are struggling to take on reading skills. Strategies that are Orton Gillingham based can be used in regular classrooms to support children in learning concepts, and the intensity of the program can be increased to support students in smaller groups and students in special education. The structure of Orton Gillingham's complements the CKLA curriculum currently used in our K2, which is our core program there and is used in teaching foundational skills. So there are two aspects of the Orton Gillingham programming that are important. First, the program is explicit, systematic, and multisensory. And second, for teachers to teach using Orton Gillingham, they participate in an intensive 30-hour training. What has been exciting in the school district of Black River Falls is the grassroots movement that it has been. A few teachers attended the training because of how highly recommended it is for students, and then shared their excitement about the training with fellow teachers. This led to more teachers, even entire grade levels, asking to participate in the training. It's been such a testament to the dedication and commitment within our system. For me personally, this was the best professional development that I have taken part in for the teaching of reading for struggling readers or struggling learners. For example, the program explicitly teaches us about the rules of English language. We learned the rules about why the letter S makes a S sound in words like snake and a Z sound in words like was. We found through our experience that our teachers are learning many phonetic concepts through our core knowledge curriculum and Orton Gillingham training because college preparation courses haven't stressed this work until recently. Again, kudos to the staff and leaders that have engaged in this work, and thank you to our administrators for supporting and encouraging this process.
So we have one more document we'd like to share, and it's entitled The Ladder of Reading. It was in the board packet, and it's an interesting graphic. And what it shows us is that in that green level at the top, that 35% and then that 5% up on top, those students will learn to read with any type of reading program. And then in that middle, we have that 40 to 50%, and they really do require explicit systematic instruction that is sequential. And then that bottom 10 to 15%, the students who have dyslexia, those students really will only take on the code with an explicit program like the one that we're talking about here today. But what's amazing about this is that they can take on that reading and they can take on that learning. And on this far side, what we also learned is it doesn't matter if you're in the top 5% or in that 10 to 15% of the bottom, all students benefit from this approach to reading instruction. And then I just shared one other document because the nerd in me has to share references and vocabulary. And so this is just a really great document because it goes through and talks about the elements of literacy that are really important in the programs that we're stressing right now. And then the second page are the references to some of the best researchers and research that's been done in this area. So for your reading pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan and Ms. Kramer. Does anyone have any questions for them?
So you said that 30 hours of training, will that be within a year, year and a half, or?
We're fortunate that the organization that sponsors this training, called MC, offers it in a huge array of options. Many of our teachers have spent 2 consecutive weekends doing the 30 hours. Some have spent it over the time of a month in the evenings. Many did it through the summer. And so, thankfully, those options are available to them and they have really latched on.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Do we have a lot of other teachers that are anxious to get involved in this?
I just finished signing up probably 5 teachers, and we just continue to offer the opportunity. And if people let us know, absolutely, we're making it happen, because it's just such a, it's so powerful to have something so systemic that can be used in so many ways to support our students.
I'm just curious what brought it to the forefront, because I remember maybe 30 plus 40, could be 30 some years ago, teachers were using it and then it went away, and all of a sudden it's back again. I was wondering why.
It started with an instructional coach, interventionist, that's here in the room with us today, and she started bringing it to meetings and saying, I think this is something that we really need in our district. And then once she did it, and she passed the word on, and someone else did it, and it just has been a kind of a grassroots movement within the teaching staff.
Any more questions?
And it's really good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you so very much. The CNI has been moved, so we will go on to virtual programming update.
Sure, so I just wanted to provide a snapshot update to the board. So first, the bottom half, I kind of combined 2 items. Enrollment, please note that this is not third Friday count. These documents were prepared for our September 20th meeting. And so it is not third Friday count. It was just a comparison from last September in 2020 compared to September 2021. When we get to the third Friday count, it gets far more comprehensive because that is all district residents, whereas this is literally students sitting butts in seats are the numbers that you see up there. The top portion is the virtual, and I really wanted to highlight that for you because if you recall last year, we were really unique in this, well, I'm going to say state, but maybe nation, I don't know. Some districts never invited students to come physically back to the district. That certainly was not our approach. Many districts offered an optional virtual program. We had 35% of our students elect to go virtual last year, and that was significantly higher than any other district that I'm aware of that allowed the option. It was really significantly high. And so that meant monumentally heavy lifting by all of our staff to try to accommodate both the students in front of them and the virtual learning. This year, May, June, as the admin team and leadership teams talked about it, we were not intending to offer virtual instruction except if there was somebody who needed who had a documented medical condition that would prevent them from coming to school in a pandemic. And so that was our decision all the way through. And then August comes and the case rate starts to increase. The Delta variant becomes alive and well in our community. And the board decided that they were going to institute a mask mandate. It got to the point where we were having people calling us saying, I don't want my child to come to school if they have to wear a mask, and so we would provide virtual instruction for them. That did not feel right, morally right, to not offer it to families who are concerned about their family safety due to COVID. And so we already had purchased the slots for virtual enrollment, and so we broadened that opportunity. I think I sent something out to all the districts, like August 16th perhaps, I don't remember the exact date, offering that virtual was a choice. And I think that this is, it's exciting for us that there is an option for those families who still choose it, but that overwhelmingly we have our students back face-to-face in our schools. And so I want to just talk briefly about this. Our kindergarten and 4K students, I think I shared previously with the board, they're actually working through Wisconsin Virtual School, but Lori Spouty, our very own teacher, is their virtual school teacher, along with she's teaching about 50 other students from throughout the state, and she is having a blast, and we've gotten lots of positive feedback from Wisconsin Virtual School. Our first through fifth graders each have a virtual teacher from somewhere else in the state through Wisconsin Virtual School, but they also have a local coach. And so there's a Black River Falls School District teacher who connects with those families on a weekly basis, gives them a progress update on the attendance and the academic work of their student each week. Those students are still considered Black River Falls students. You are aware that sometimes students will open and roll out to like a McFarland or something. We lose all aid and that student is no longer a member of our district because they've chosen another district. This possibility allows for kind of the best of both worlds, and so those students will still be included in other activities and events as they are interested throughout the year. Sixth grade through senior year of high school, they are individual classes that students are slotted into, and there is also a coach, that's Mark Ricavina's job. He's been our virtual school coordinator for many years. Interestingly, as many of us kind of hypothesized last year, with all students having to go virtual for a while, we were curious what our virtual numbers would look like at the high school this year for those students who just take 1 or 2 classes, and the numbers are significantly down. So after students had to do all virtual, they decided they'd rather come face to face. But we certainly still have some students taking the little onesies and twosies virtual because it broadens their course offerings. That catalog of credits that they can earn in high school through that program is just phenomenal, it really is. And so Mark is serving as our coach for our 6th through high school students. The ones that are listed on here are the ones that are full-time virtual, not the high school students that are taking 1 or 2 virtual courses. So I just wanted to give you that snapshot after all of that startup energy. Anybody have any questions or concerns about that?
Okay, we'll move on to enrollment.
They were together, sorry. They were.
I kind of figured that when I was listening, but I didn't know if you had anything extra. Okay. Now the next on the agenda will be monthly expenditures. You have those in your packet. Does anyone want anything pulled out for greater explanation? Any questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Facility update, Dr. Severson.
I don't have a lot of information for you, just again, reminding people where we're moving on that referendum work. You've likely driven by the transportation office and it is really close to being move-in ready. The electric is now there. They're waiting for some additional concrete, and soon the buses will be off of the old 3rd Street playground and they'll have their new home out there, which will be exciting. They kicked off the work in 4th Street and at the high school, but there's really not a lot of new information to report from our last gathering.
Any questions? We are now at the point of public comment for items that people have signed up for.
Keep it close.
Keep it close, okay, sorry. And I've asked Vice President Brad Dobbs to read through the public comment guidelines.
Good evening. We have several individuals signed up for public comment tonight. On behalf of our board, I want to thank everyone here for taking the time to help this board guide our decisions, and I truly appreciate your passion surrounding educating our students. We have rules and policies that guide how our board receives public comment. The Black River Falls Board of Education encourages constructive, orderly contributions from the public at all regular and special meetings. Meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the business of the schools and therefore are not public meetings, but meetings held in public. The presiding officer will recognize the individual registrants and hold public comment session lasting at least 30 minutes in length. After allowing this timeline for the initial group of speakers, the presiding officer will identify to the board the approximate number of remaining registrants. And the board, by motion and its discretion, may elect to permit all remaining registrants to present their comments at that point in the meeting, close the public comment session, and direct all remaining registrants to either return at a future meeting or submit written comments to the district administrator who will ensure they are circulated to members of the board. Extend the public comment session for a definite period, for example, another 20 minutes. In order to expedite comments this evening, we'll be calling a speaker and an on-deck speaker. And you'll be speaking from the podium down there, and then we'll move the on-deck speaker to that seat directly behind it. The presiding officer shall recognize registrants in number order of their written registrations. Upon being recognized, each registrant will stand and state his or her name, municipality of residence, and relationship to the district, and proceed to the substance of his or her remarks. The standard allotted time for public comment shall be a maximum of 4 minutes per individual, but the speaker is not required to use all 4 minutes, nor may the speaker give remaining time to other speakers. You may also simply address the board with, "I agree with that speaker," if you so choose. During a public comment period, board members will not engage in substantive discussion. The extent of any response to the speaker shall be limited in accordance with applicable law. If a person who intends to address the board at a meeting wishes to request a reasonable accommodation that will better enable the individual to have meaningful access to the public comment forum, he or she may make that request by contacting the office of the district administrator. This evening, for those of you unable or unwilling to wear a mask, we provided a workstation out that door right there under the exit sign. When called the on-deck position, simply move through that door to the workstation, and Laura Simonson will guide you through the process. Thank you again for your participation.
So the first up is Annette Kruger. She's addressing item 5.0, and on deck will be Sue Lee Home.
Hello, Annette Kruger on Black River Falls Schools District. This comment is to the school board. I want you to do everything you need to do to protect the children in our schools, like wear masks, encourage vaccination, and everything else to keep our children safe. We all need to do what is right for the children. We need to protect the kids. As you know, children under 12 cannot get the vaccination yet. And the adults who cannot get vaccinated due to other health issues. That's why we all need to wear masks and get vaccinated. The biggest issue now is that young people, kids, toddlers, and even babies are getting COVID. If even one child in Jackson County gets COVID and dies, ask yourself if it's worth it, not wearing a mask or not getting vaccinated. Ask the parents of the child that died. In some states, children now make up 1 in 4 cases of the sick. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. 99% of the cases are unvaccinated. Some people that are vaccinated do get sick, but they don't get as sick, and they're not going to the ER, and they're not in the ICU, and they're not dying. A doctor said if you are unvaccinated, you will get COVID at some time. And with the new Delta variant, which is more contagious, we have been told by doctors and nurses in the ICU that some people beg for the shot when they're dying, but they are told that it's too late for them. Many in the ICU have made a video before they die to tell their loved ones to please get vaccinated. The longer COVID is around, we will likely get another new variant that is even more contagious and deadly than the Delta variant. Jackson County has gone from 0 cases back in late June and the first week of July, and since that time we went to 4, 6, 22, 34, 60, 83, and this past week, 69, plus one more death. Now, 29 deaths total in Jackson County. 1 month ago, at the last school board meeting on August 16th, we had 34 cases that week. In the meeting tonight, we have 69 COVID cases last reported. The week before that was 83. What will this week be in COVID cases? As of today, around 678,000 COVID deaths in the United States. Some hospitals are full, mostly in southern states, and some pediatric hospitals are full. I am very concerned and sad about the condition that our county and our country is in with COVID-19 and all the suffering of the people and the deaths. What don't people understand about a pandemic? We all need to come together to fight this pandemic, and each one of us needs to do our part. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your time.
Next is Sue Leadholm. She's talking about community engagement, and next up is Betsy Sullivar on items 7 and 9.
Although still coming in, at press time, the Board of Education had received 37 staff members' quotes of appreciation for Dr. Severson. Some of them are, your enthusiasm for educational excellence and life in general is truly contagious and unmatched. You have done so many wonderful things for BRF School District, and I'm thankful to be part of it. Melissa Plaza. You've been a great mentor and guide in how to deal with really difficult situations. I appreciate your insight, advice, and devotion towards our kids. Jeremiah Vangan. You are kind, compassionate, and have the students, parents, and staff's best interests at heart. Angie Hawes. You always greet everyone with a smile on your face and are always pleasant in nature. You have more strength than I have. Go and do what you always do. Kate Claw. As a teacher and parent in this school district, I can't possibly express my true gratitude for your efforts. Dave Cowley. Your upbeat and caring personality are contagious. You are the right leader at the right time. Danielle O'Brien. I appreciate so many things about you. You're enthusiastic, you're dedicated, you're intentional, and you're strong. Lara Zillman. I want you to know that in all my interactions with you over the years, you have always conducted yourself as a professional in an approachable fashion. Lori Spouty. Your BRFSD family appreciates everything you do. Rachel Hendrickson. Keep your head high and know that many are behind you in this crazy world of education. Wendy Everson. In every role I have seen her as a contagious go-getter who always gets the hard job done. Her work ethic and commitment to this district and our community is inspirational. Jen Bolger. She leads by example, and her commitment behind the scenes makes our system run smoothly. Ann Eberhardt. Dr. Severson is doing the best for our school district. Jenny Massart. Having worked in other districts, I can tell you firsthand that Dr. Severson is one of the best superintendents in the area. Justina Ermansky. You have been inspirational in bringing the happiness advantage to Black River Falls. Kristen Geyer. Shelby has always put the welfare of students first. We are lucky to have her. Nancy Gorman. I admire your integrity and grit. You are never afraid to dig deep and get through the challenges. Jen Dahl. She leads by modeling the efforts she would like to see and does not expect from others what she wouldn't expect from herself. Sue Leadholm. Dr. Severson renewed my hope in collaborative leadership. Her dedication to our staff and students is unmatched. Denise Romo. She works endlessly to be a great leader by communicating, thinking critically, solving problems, and making decisions. Allison Berger. Your dedication, leadership, tact, and knowledge make you the perfect leader for Black River Falls during these crazy times. Kim Janice. Thank you does not seem like enough words to express the gratitude we feel towards your leadership, but thankful is how I feel. Katie Brew. Your work is appreciated by more people than you realize. Pam Olson. She is always an encouragement to staff and is dedicated to excellence in our school district. Troy Tandy. You give 100% of your heart and soul to bring improvement to our school. Karen DeBerg. When I speak about the many cultural activities our district does at state and national conferences, jaws drop. Ariel Hall. Thank you for always being such a big cheerleader for the well-being of our students. Connie Halstead. Your determination and positivity are something I strive for every day. Brittany Yeske. Decisions you make are based on what is best for the students. You are not one to make these decisions without a great deal of thought and consideration. Heather Bludorn. As a parent and teacher, I'm glad to have a school leader who values the students and their well-being of success above all else. Joy Vangan. The huge growth we made last year through all the challenges we faced would not have been possible without your leadership, Josh Pierce. I am extremely grateful for Dr. Stevenson's professional and empathetic navigation for our school district during these challenging times. Brad Marquardt. I have known you to have many roles in our school district, and with each one, you have always done what is best for students, staff, and our community with much respect. Susan Allison, I want you to know how personal we feel about our leader and how hurt we were as a community about the comments in the newspaper.
Is addressing items 7 and 9, and Sharon Corcoran is on deck.
All right, Betsy Settlebauer, I'm a parent, I'm a taxpayer from Hickston. I'm speaking tonight about public comment in education. First, I want to thank you for moving it to a larger place. It's nice to see more people here tonight, and to have microphones that actually amplify in the room. Last Tuesday, the board president apologized numerous times of how last Monday night was handled. Thank you for admitting your mistake. Now, what have we learned from it? We learned that the policy 181 under voting number 5 was violated. Split votes, voting minority shall be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. On Tuesday, the original plan was to have a study session meeting. That was changed to a study session / board meeting. Less than 24-hour notice was given to the public, as stated in policy 171.1. The only time for less than 24 hours notice is for good cause. No explanation was given for good cause on Tuesday night. In fact, Dr. Severson said that the action items which she handpicked did not have to be voted on that night. So again, was a really good cause, especially since we're all here tonight. Also, last Tuesday night, there was no public comments about public comment rules. The board discussed for over an hour about public comments, with the public sitting right there. You did not once ask for our opinion about the policy and the rules that you were implementing. Dr. Severson just sent an email out to every family member, and she says, and I quote, "First and foremost, the board places a high priority on getting feedback and input from the public when they have information or opinions to share," unquote. Unless, of course, the board disagrees with you. This is the second time the board and the administration have changed rules of public comments in the last 3 months. Why? I encourage everyone here tonight, look at the past board meetings from April till September and observe how the public acts versus how the board has treated the public. Rules for public comment have not been modified since 2012. And recently they've been modified twice. Why? Again, you can go back, you can watch the board meetings. I'm all for order during a meeting, but the public has shown restraint where the board has not. A perfect example was last Monday night, with Tuesday, the board president apologizing for breaking policies. Again, how much time is your child's worth each month at a board meeting? Last Tuesday night, the board said the monthly meetings will only last 2 hours. I understand no one wants to be here all night, but when our district continues to be in the bottom 4% of all districts in the state, the board may want to put in some extra time. But then again, our district has been in the bottom 4% or lower since 2013. And who was hired during that time? It's time to stop playing these foolish games and time to do what works, and that's evidence-based education. Nicole spoke about that a little earlier tonight, about the program they're going to be implementing. Well, you know what? Parents have mentioned this program to the board and to the Student Success Committee over 5 years ago. It's out there. The public for the last 8 years have brought it to the board's attention about different education things that we can change and do better, but the board continues to ignore them. I don't really believe you all like being in the bottom 4%. We have talented teachers in our district who want to do better. We have parents in our district who want to help. Let's start tonight. Let's start making this happen. Thank you.
we have to step one
Oh,
time.
I'm sorry.
Just for clarification, that last week's board meeting, you were misquoted. We had two items. I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. What the board heard me.
Let me know, I will probably give it.
I would like, Ms. Lewis to address the board that we did not,
I don't know that she has enough information from those policies. She doesn't have them all memorized in front of her. So I've just reinforced to the board that our posting and meeting journey last week, Monday to Tuesday, was run by our attorney, Shana Lewis, and we did meet our board policy.
Okay, Sharon Corcoran will be addressing item 5.3, and Lydia Nordahl is on deck.
Okay, I'm Sharon Corcoran. I was a parent of 3 students that graduated from Black River Falls High School. I'm currently the grandmother of a girl that is attending the 7th grade in Black River Falls. So I am also a retired teacher. So what I wanted to speak on is I don't think people understand, unless they've been teaching, how difficult and unprecedented these times are for teachers, for administration, for parents. It's just an awful, awful time. And I have been a proud member of this community for 45 years. And one thing I've always felt about Black River Falls is that we pull together. We don't try to divide and point fingers and blame. We try to solve problems. And right now I feel like we're too busy pointing fingers and blaming to solve things. I also want to say that I really want to thank you as a board for your heroism in making the decision of the mask mandate. I want my granddaughter safe in the school. She was scared of COVID. She wore her mask all the time. She reads, she's a very, very smart young lady, and she wanted the masks. She wanted her students, she wanted her fellow students to wear masks. She wants to be safe. So I want to thank you for your heroic decision to require masks. COVID is here. There's no denying that. So I just want to thank you for that. I also want to say that one of the things I do know from being a retired teacher and from teaching is the importance of students actually being in the classroom. I taught in middle school, I taught in elementary school, I also taught in a charter school that where basically what we were doing was virtual learning. Virtual learning has its place, but it's hard. They were doing virtual with me as a facilitator to help them at their desk, at their computer, and it was hard for them. For a parent to do that at home is very, very difficult. No matter, I was a teacher and it was hard to help them. So having kids in school, in a classroom, it's the best way for kids to learn. So, okay, so the masks then help us keep kids in school. Whether you believe about this whole COVID thing or not, we know that it doesn't just prevent kids from getting the COVID virus, it keeps them, the flu virus is way down, the regular flu. So we need to take that into account. So I just want to thank you all. I have known Dr. Severson since she first started at here. I've known her, she taught my child in school. He wasn't very nice, but
he was quite a singer though, I tell you what.
He was a tough student, but he still talks about Dr. Severson and the excellent job she did in her program, because no matter what, she's always given 100%. Also, when she started her administration program, when she started becoming an administrator, she was administrator at the first school I taught at, the very first school, first time she was an administrator. And she was very well liked by the staff. She was always positive. She never did any bullying. She always led by the most positive way possible. So thank you for that. Okay, that's all I have to say. Go Brewers!
Item 9, and on deck is Ann Zilmer.
Give me 1 second. Jill, if you shut your sound off, I think mine will amplify.
We can hear you, Shelley.
And if you get a little bit closer, I think we'll be able to hear you as well.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Great, thank you. I'm Lydia Nordall.
Lydia, if you could get a little bit closer to the screen, there are people who are having a hard time hearing you. Bring the microphone up here.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear in the back at all? I'm getting some thumbs up, some.
Oh.
Can I come and get a microphone?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Rachel, will you step out, give that microphone? Oh, wrong way, Tom. He's going out that door. This is a little dramatic, isn't it? We're in the theater. There's our comedy skit for the night. Thanks for joining us. I don't know if that's going to work. We'll see. No, not at all. Is it on? Green light?
Can you hear us now?
Absolutely. Thank you. Good problem solving.
Thank you. Thank you. All you people who are technologically savvy, thank you. And I'm Lydia Nordall, and I'm a taxpayer, and I absolutely love having it here. I can actually hear every board member and everyone speak. It's just wonderful. Losing my papers here now that I've moved things around so much. Well, good evening, and thank you for your time and for your attention. In recognition of the vital importance for education excellence and meaningful collaboration between the school district and families, we parents recognize November as Parents' Rights and Education Month. Whereas we acknowledge parents are a child's first and foremost educator and have the primary responsibility for the education, care, and training of their children. And whereas education is comprised of a range of activities by which families and communities teach knowledge and skills, including ethical and behavioral norms and traditions. And whereas fairness and equality must be afforded to all students and families in the school district. And whereas public schools need cooperation and support of all parents, and whereas the parent-child relationship shall be honored and supported by teachers, counselors, administrators, and school board members. Therefore, we declare November Parents' Rights and Education Month, affirming the constitutional right of parents to direct the education and upbringing of their children. Hold it up. Out, like that. Okay, sorry. Parents of school-age children need reassurance from you personally that their parent-child relationship is crucial to their child's success in school. With a show of good faith through the adoption of this Parents' Rights and Education Proclamation, parents will gain confidence that you fully support their rights in educational settings. This also affirms your belief that parents do have a vital role in the collaborative partnership between families, schools, and administrators. So please vote to officially recognize November as Parents' Rights and Education Month. I did submit this and ask this to be put on the agenda. I see it is not on, so I'm requesting that it be put on next month's agenda so that you can take action on it. Thank you so much.
Next up is Ann Zilmer, and on deck is Patty Jacobson.
I'm here, I'm Ann Zillman. I'm here as a concerned citizen to support the school administration and school board and teachers as well.
Ms. Gilmer?
I feel it's very important for the safe.
She's trying to tell you to put your mask on.
Please put your mask on.
You can't talk with your mask on, you can go in the hallway.
Thank you.
What is important is safety for all the students. That means the Native American, Hispanic, and others. Good health is included in the safety category, which means wearing a mask, getting vaccination, and following the COVID rules. Let's see, the students are taught that and are being and taught the curriculum at all levels. I request the facts from the shopper, shopper gave the percentage of students who require remedial courses in college. I disagree with that completely. I would request the facts be provided to us all for that statement. And thank you for listening.
Patty Jacobson will address item 5, and on deck is Jillian Moore.
Good evening. I'm not here to try to dazzle you with studies or data, because I think you're probably overwhelmed with that by now. The nature of science is that it evolves with different conclusions and even more questions. I would rather appeal to your humanity and your common sense than the idea of sacrifice. I'm a nurse practitioner, a family nurse practitioner, and part of what I do is child developmental evaluations. So I'm quite familiar with this material. As humans, we develop from infants to adults in a stepwise fashion that is well known. There are windows of learning that are specific to age and developmental milestones that are consistent across every culture. We screen infants for hearing at birth because their overall behavioral development is stunted if they cannot hear as infants. We know that learning in the toddler years is experiential, and interactions with people and the environment are crucial in the advancement towards adulthood. They need to see faces and expressions. At age 7 to 8, children become more socially aware, and from 7 to 11, children begin to develop a sense of values to guide decision-making. Our national and local responses to SARS-CoV-2, the masking, quarantining, and constant testing and emphasis on sanitation has interfered with all of these developmental tasks. We have created an environment of fear, resulting in increased numbers of cases of childhood depression, anxiety, and suicidal thinking, as well as behavioral changes at home. An anxious and fearful child cannot learn. I visited with my grandchildren last week and experienced some of this. The oldest, age 10, spilled some of her cereal on the clean kitchen countertop. She panicked, swept it into the wastebasket, crying. She didn't know if the counter had been sanitized. Parents have reported their children afraid to leave their house without a mask, wearing masks to bed. Remember, this is occurring at stages of development that profoundly influence how a child sees the world as he or she matures. The truth is that children have very different immune systems, and they respond very differently to viruses and illnesses. They need to be exposed to viruses and germs and bacteria to develop their immunity as an adult, and they very rarely become very seriously ill, especially from COVID SARS-2. There have been 0 deaths in children under the age of 18 in Wisconsin as of to date. Out of the 6 million positive test results considered to be positive COVID in children in the United States, 554 have sadly died. That's very sad. But that is a 0.00009% case fatality rate. The risk of illness and death is in individuals over 65 with comorbidities in Wisconsin, and even then the death rate in Wisconsin is 1.1%. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends masking. In another breath, using CDC recommendations, they state that schools reflect disease trends of what is happening in the community. Schools are not considered the main source of spread. So why are only schools requiring mask mandates, repeated painful testing, and quarantining of children? Rarely are businesses in town requiring any of this. Public events at stadiums, baseball and football games you see on TV where individuals sit side by side screaming and yelling have no mask requirements. It would seem to me that we are requiring all children to sacrifice their education and probably more importantly, their growth and development in the interest of adults or of the tiny percent of children who may die from COVID. Or are we trying to possibly decrease the amount of stress on healthcare professionals and facilities? Could that need be met in a different way? Never before, with far more serious illnesses such as mumps and measles, have we asked such a sacrifice of our children. What precedents are we setting for the future? I'd like to close with a Nelson Mandela quote. There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. And I thank you for your attention.
And 5.3, and next up is Axel Dressler.
I just wanted to say that why do you buy masks if they're not effective in preventing the general public from catching coronavirus? There's no evidence that states that the wearing of masks that stops viruses. In fact, there's evidence that states the opposite. Anyways, the surgical masks were designed to keep medical surgeons from accidentally infecting patients' wounds, not to prevent the spread of viruses. Other kids like me are finally discovering the real truth, and one day there will be a revolution, basically. Hopefully you board members actually listen. Since I'm a kid, sometimes people like you don't care what kids say.
Axel Dressler will address civil and respectable discourse. And next up is Natalie Cogswell.
Could I ask for a timeout first? My glasses get fogged up, so if I could have them.
Sure. Hold the microphone up so that it's...
Yep. My name is Axel Dressler. I'm a former teacher and school board member. Isn't it great that parents of our children are interested in the workings of our school district? When parents attend parent-teacher conferences, when they check their child's homework, when they contact their child's teachers and our principal to ask questions and or make suggestions, they show great parental skills. When parents attend special events like classroom projects, concerts, sporting events, or any of the many school activities offered to our children, they are increasing the odds of their child succeeding in school. How great is that? When parents have specific issues in mind, they sometimes attend school board meetings to ask questions and express concerns. How great is it? It's important when prior to attending a board meeting, parents inform themselves with accurate information. All of our school staff and administrators are a good source of honest and unabridged information. Why? Because they are dedicated professionals who choose their career because of love of children and believe education to be an honorable profession. They are all educated people who take pride in their work and would gladly share honest information. Information can also be found on the WPI, Wisconsin Department of Public Education website. When people do go to a school board meeting to discuss concerns, there are rules required by law. A most important aspect of communicating with the school board is that it be done with civility and respect, just like the schools teach children. I'm convinced that most responsible parents would expect the same when addressed by their own child. Personnel, mean-spirited and harmful attacks accomplish nothing in the end, but only make the resolution likely less likely. The shopper this week contains an ad paid for by a group called Jackson County for Education. Bravo for getting involved in education. Boo for using outdated statistics, half-truths, outright misinformation to promote a personal bias. How great is that? Not so great. There are so many falsehoods about our school district in that ad. I must wonder what is behind all of this. Why go to such extremes to disguise personal biases and opinions to look like facts? Why suddenly be so negative about our school district when we have so much to be proud of? Could it be because our district is holding fast on the mask issue? If it is, there is a better way to communicate than with such vitriol. There is one matter of concern I wish to address. The personal attack on our school board superintendent, Dr. Shelley Severson, sounds vindictive and is totally incorrect. I've seen Dr. Severson, and I've known her for a long time as a fellow teacher and as a school board member. She cares deeply about children. When she was an elementary principal, she made the effort to learn the name of every single student in her building. And in the morning, she would greet each one with a personal good morning and a kind word of encouragement. The children reciprocated with big smiles and hugs.
Mr. Dressler, your time's up, I'm sorry.
5 seconds. It's because of my glasses. In the eyes of teachers and staff I've spoken to, she is respected as hardworking, fair, attentive, and supportive leader. She has been recognized at the state level for her excellent work and for caring about all our diverse students equally. And how great is that?
Regarding 5.4, Chris Warble is on deck.
Hi, I'm Natalie Cogswell. I'm a parent from Black River Falls. I've got a senior and a 7th grader. I originally was going to say I supported the accelerated clinical labs testing, but I really have to address the fact that there was a 17-year-old from Mondovi that died on Wednesday. There was a 13-year-old from Fort Atkinson that died on September 14th. So there have been 2 deaths, one very local. So I feel for that parent because I have a 17-year-old myself. And don't ask if they have a pre-existing condition because that's like asking a girl who got raped, what was she wearing? That's... And as far as, I wasn't even going to touch on the masks because it seems like the goalposts are getting moved. First we were arguing masks and now we're attacking Shelley. So we changed the goalposts and we don't get what we want. But there's been, I've sent all this information to the board, and I'm happy to share it with the rest of you. There have been 2 studies or reports out in the MMWR published on the 24th about school districts where the masking was implemented right away versus when they were implemented later, and how it did reduce the spread of COVID in the schools. I have that available if anyone wants it. It's also, you can find it on the CDC site from the September 24th publication. And then there was a big study from Bangladesh that you can look at too that was published back in August. It's 94 pages long. If you wish to read it, I can send you the link because it won't send you an email. So wearing the mask along with your distancing, your hand hygiene, getting your vaccine, this is how we slow the spread of this virus. It's not one thing by itself. And I see eyes rolling out there, but we got to do this together. We can't do this one way, just one thing. And I'm sorry I didn't stick to my topic.
Support of Dr. Severson's ability. And next up is Ross Goldsmith.
Well, good evening. My name is Chris Roble. I am a retired, I have one of those filters in here and it's making it really muffly. I apologize. I'm a retired Black River Falls School District teacher. I taught economics and I taught history I'm here to address the advertisement that was in the shopper this past weekend. My first impressions were shocked. I was shocked. The things that came to my attention was how personal this advertisement was in attacking our superintendent and the school board, and I felt like the whole school system, the staff and the teachers were included in that. I thought it was vicious. It seemed very discouraging to the community as a whole, in that we don't solve problems this way in our community. We have discourse, we have a civil discussion on how to enforce and encourage our values in our community. I know Shelley Severson. I've known her forever, and I can tell you that she is dedicated wholeheartedly to this school district and to the students and to having a forward vision for this school district. We are lucky to have a superintendent of such high quality in our district. She has steered our school district through this pandemic, which is continuing. Along with the school board, we thank you for that. I think it's silly that we're wasting time on things that really shouldn't be wasted on. I hope that in the future people would make an example to our students by working together and trying to make changes that way in our school district. We have quality people working here. It's kind of like when you're a parent, a lot of times people say, you don't know how it is until you have kids. Well, it's like that for teachers too. You don't know how it is if you're working in the school. You don't know what it's like on a daily basis. I'm getting off track here, but I was talking to somebody this weekend, and it was a teacher from another district that I happen to know. And that teacher told me, I'm having the roughest year I've ever had. This pandemic is just killing me. And I think that we should be appreciative to the school board, to our superintendent, to the staff for working and trying to help us manage through this pandemic. And I think that's about all that I have to say. I kind of get off the cuff there a little bit. Sorry about that. I hope in the future we can work together as a community to move forward. Thank you.
On deck is Eugene Crone.
For the record, this was supposed to be said last Monday, but we all know what happened with that one. Good evening, my name is Ross Goldsmith. I'm a community member here within the Blackwood Falls School District. Numbers have been thrown around lately for at a lot of different meetings. Emphasis in certain areas and disregarded in other. Of course, there's only one number that really should be the focus of the board, and that is 402. 402 out of 419 school districts. That's where we rate. But this school board seems to be focused more on words than actually getting their job done. This is a clear issue with leadership and being responsible when issues arise. It's far easier to make excuses and blame demographics than take a hard look at yourselves and the choices that you are making with your curriculum. The curriculum that is being pushed forward by this board and the superintendent. These are blatant violations of school board policy, specifically number 110. The educational philosophy, and I quote, the Blackwood Falls School Board recognizes that the district has an obligation to provide the best possible educational opportunity to students attending the school district. Due to failing at this level, the board also fails in number 1 of policy 110. The climate of the schools must be orderly, respectful, of individuals and positive in nature. While I cannot attest to the day-to-day comings and goings at school, I can say that the attitude and demeanor of board members to fellow board members and members of the communities at the past meetings is appalling. Little things like not showing, that show disrespect, as not making eye contact when the people is speaking, or such comments as, "I have a degree." When someone questions the motives, as if that little piece of paper gives you carte blanche to do whatever you want. This type of attitude has a trickle-down effect to your staff and how they treat parents and students on a one-on-one basis. This is also a violation of number 3 in Policy 110. A priority focus must be on the basic skill areas. Too many of our students are not proficient in reading, writing, and math. We've all heard the story of the valedictorian who had to take remedial math just to get into her course of study in college. Of course, the number 402 also supports this claim. There is also a violation of School Board Policy 210, administrative goals. The administrator of the School District of Black River Falls is responsible for providing the opportunity for staff and students to perform and achieve at high levels. Administrators should demonstrate leadership skills and the ability to work effectively with parents, students, staff, and the community. The board expects the administrator to be creative and effective problem solvers. Too many times this year at meetings I've attended, all I hear is it's COVID this or these other guidelines set forth by the Jackson County Health Department. These are excuses, plain and simple, and it shows the board and the administrator has no plan. 2, plan, organize, and regularly assess the effectiveness of the district's educational program. Clearly, this has not been happening as the school district's ratings has continued to decline. Create and foster the best learning environment possible. Again, this has not been happening, or else our school rating would not be 402. And lastly, this is a violation of Board Policy 221, District Administrator. As I've said earlier, this is a leadership problem and needs to be addressed at this level. Superintendent Severson has failed to provide leadership in educational programs, which has led to the continued decline of the school district. She has also failed to provide a positive and effective leadership that promotes academic excellence for students and staff. Based on the violation of the school board, I above call for the immediate resignation of Superintendent Severson, and upon the board voting and accepting her resignation, each and every one of you needs to submit your own resignation and resign. It is time for new leadership in Black River Falls School District. Your time is done. Ooh!
5.3 and 5.4 with Dr. Colzine on deck.
I'm Gene Crone, I'm a faculty.
Could you move the microphone up just a little bit? There you go. Thank you.
I want to comment a couple of things about masking. First thing is, there was an open letter to schools and parents that was widely published in the media in late August. It was written by Ellen Wall, who's a physician, head of the Department of Pediatrics in the University in Madison. And it was signed by 500 pediatricians from all across the state of Wisconsin. It acknowledges that in-person learning is very important, and the letter outlines ways to keep kids in school using COVID safety protocols. The letter itself, just briefly summarize it. Kids have no say in what the school does. It's up to the school board, school administrators, teachers, and parents to come together with a few simple science-based tested methods, bring kids safely back into the classroom. It will take a great effort, but will work. The steps that they suggest taking First of all, masking universally.
Dr. Crone, I'm so sorry, we're having a really hard time. I don't know if it's easier to hold it right in front of you or whatever helps, but we're having a hard time hearing. Thank you.
So the steps that they suggest taking, first and foremost is universal masking. There are many studies that show that it works. It prevents the spread of COVID-19 and allows for minimal quarantining of students. It's the most important step, they say. The second thing is that schools this year, as I understand it, if people are masked and they're not within 3 feet of a person that's infected, would be considered safe. So that means that if you're masked and you're not within, it means that you're safe if you're within more than 3 feet and masked, and you wouldn't have to quarantine. If not masking in the school, then the whole class would have to quarantine, which means a lot of, more difficulty for parents and then the last thing that they suggested, of course, is getting vaccinated. And it sounds like really soon kids even 5 to 11 will have a vaccine available. The last thing I wanted to mention, some kind of interesting local statistics. In the 25th, I think it was, of August, the BJ carried an article about COVID in our schools. And in that article, they talked about Alma Center, Maryland, having had a lot of COVID without masking in place. And so I got some statistics on that. At Alma Center,
Your time is up.
in 5 seconds. Anyway, it turns out that Alma Center had to quarantine 70% of students in that first week, whereas Black River just had to quarantine 4%. It was 4 times more effective.
Individual for open comment, we have Dr. Colzine. He's talking about 5.2, 5.3, 5.4.
Thanks, and I'd like to thank the school board and Shelley for their leadership in COVID. I feel they've made a lot of the right choices. First, concerning rapid-free COVID testing, it has become more difficult to find. National Guard used to help with testing at Jackson County. They're tied up with Afghan refugees. Our school district can obtain rapid-free testing at the school for any student or their families with parental permission. Melrose, Mindoro, and Alma Center school districts are already using this testing provided by Accelerated Labs. Dr. Crone and I strongly recommend that the board approves having this testing available to the students and their families. I spoke with Timothy Vu, Hospital Lab Director, Natalie Coxwell, Crone Clinic Lab Director, and they feel this is one of several acceptable testing approaches. Masks for students have already shown their effectiveness compared to Melrose and Alma Center. Those statistics showed that 4 times as many students in Alma Center and Melrose had to quarantine compared to Black River, where masks were required right from the start. Those other 2 school districts quickly went over to mandatory masking. Dr. Crone and I recommend that masks remain mandatory at high transmission rates, which they already are, but also add in moderate and substantial transmission rates. They could become optional when transmission rates are low. And regarding many of those opposed to masks and vaccination are also opposed to testing and quarantines. I believe, and it's understandable, they wish to have everyone get COVID, get their natural immunity, and have the pandemic over with. This would lead to a huge spike in cases and deaths and further overburden our healthcare workers, the opposite of flattening the curve of cases. Let's look at a country that has gotten it over with. Denmark has currently truly opened up, no masks, no vaccine passports. They have an identical population to Wisconsin. They have had 1/3 as many cases as Wisconsin and 1/2 as many deaths as Wisconsin. They are 85% vaccinated. Children ages 12 to 18 are 90% vaccinated. This is the safest way to get the pandemic over with. Regarding safety of long-term masking, Dr. Crone and myself spoke with a Mayo specialist, Paul Scanlon, an intensive care specialist, and a pulmonologist. He knew of no studies showing that mask wearing weakens the immune system. There are no easy methods to assess an effective immune system. Longevity would be one way. A study of British physicians showed that physicians live longer than the general population in Britain. The longest lived specialties were surgeons, pathologists who are lab specialists, and general practitioners. All of these specialties wear masks for a significant portion of their professional life. Thank you.
Thank the public for all their comments, and now we'll move forward on item 5.2 for the COVID update.
So again, this material was prepared for our meeting on November 20th, and so I just had put in there September, sorry, time flies, for September 20th, and I just put this together as a snapshot picture of the amount of quarantine, and I just want to remind everybody that when the administrative team met to talk about what our COVID response was going to look like for the 21-22 school year, we put a heavy emphasis on the input from staff that said we want the most number of kids in our classroom for the most amount of time. And so based off of that, very unified message from the staff is how we approached our recommendation. And Dr. Crone mentioned it, that was exactly our masking discussion, that last school year, that recommendation was not acceptable to public health, CDC, that changed this school year, that you could, if you were masked and outside of 3 feet, you did not need to be quarantined. And so we recommended the full masking in an attempt to keep the most kids in the school for the most amount of time. And I had a snapshot from the other two districts on that same date. I speak very frequently with Mr. Arts and Mr. Fisher from the other two districts and with public health. Up until this, at September 15th, the school district of Black River Falls had quarantined 6% of our student population. While that is way more than we would have liked to have quarantined, it is 6%. Neighboring district at that snapshot in time had quarantined 34% of their students, and Melrose Monroe 17.6%. And so I feel like this is a very concrete evidence that the masking is helping us get to our goal of the most students in the schools for the most amount of time. And so wanted to share that quarantine data with you. Our live active dashboard, it's on the website. You can look at it anytime you want. I just wanted to share that with you. At a previous board meeting, the board had asked me for a monthly COVID update, and so that was what I did for item 5.2 by providing the virtual, the number of quarantine and comparison data, as well as the dashboard that is updated with the current active cases. Are there any questions from the board about any of that? So at the time when you made the mask mandate, you had asked for a monthly update on COVID. Are there specific topics that you would like for me to speak to each month, or was this general information helpful? Or as it gets closer, do you want to tell me what specific items you'd like to speak to, me to speak to or provide information on?
I think I have two questions, Shelley. Do you happen to know what our number is today?
I did not look at quarantine today, I'm sorry.
Is it possible you could trend over time in the future?
Yep. Yes.
So just like a every Monday or however, just future discussion on this.
And to follow up with Brad's point, I don't have a microphone, sorry, but basically, was it possible to go ahead and do the positive cases on a dashboard like they were the last school year?
They are. Jill, will you go to the website and show it? It is on our website, yeah.
It is like, okay, that's stupid.
No, it was there more? You wanted more details?
No, I don't need any more detail. I just, as long as we have access to the numbers, I was curious about.
Yep, it's on our website. If you go to brf.org, go to district info, and then it says COVID-19. I think it was last updated on Friday. District info, there you go.
That information is available to the public at any time as well.
There you go. Updated on the 24th of September.
Are there any more questions or comments about the COVID update? Okay, we'll talk about our COVID listening session discussion that we had at a previous meeting. We had a discussion about a potential listening session, but yet we haven't been clear of what that may look like or if it's needed. I'd like to open that up to board members' comments.
After thinking about the having a forum about COVID listening session, I think that there probably isn't any purpose to be served by having it at this time. We're getting all the information from different perspectives, I think, at the board meetings. So, to my feeling, I don't think we need to pursue that.
Mary might have the microphone. Thank you.
It's much easier time because what the proposal was, in my perspective, was basically it was getting a lot of people that have made recommendations for the school district to be involved with understanding what they wanted to, what the reasons were for those recommendations. And so basically there's a lot of factors in this one. There's actually the Judson Public Health. They have recommendations posted on their website, but they seem to be, in some people's opinion, recommendations without any factual basis. And it's just nice to understand what people's perspective is, and that's where part of the listening session was, the idea came from. And also there's a lot of other people that are in the public speaking in public comment, which is helpful, but they're not as organized as a group sometimes, and sometimes, like it was said earlier tonight, basically we should look for ways to go ahead and understand each other, and this is kind of what the listening session was about. We have some healthcare professionals here tonight. That's awesome, and I think that would be helpful in a session where we can actually just listen as a board to different perspectives and actually understand all the viewpoints without having basically getting any discussion that is not productive. And that's what this listening session was supposed to be. And that was my personal take on that one.
Is there anyone else who would like to weigh in on that? I understand that public health was not interested in participation because they have all of their information available to everybody. So I too, like Mary Jo, just kind of questioning what the purpose would be, whether it would be a board meeting. We certainly are providing an opportunity to hear from everybody. So anyone else wish to weigh in on that?
So in order to not have a dedicated listening session, would it be to the board's benefit to actually invite some organizations to the board meetings for a public comment section in a sense, but it wouldn't be necessarily a public comment, it would actually be just a dedicated listening session during a regular board meeting in the future.
And what purpose are you talking about? What would you like them to address?
The purpose would be to understand viewpoints that are not individuals with more of a group setting, basically from a sanctioned body or even a group of people that actually have come together and decided to speak one voice or what their viewpoints were. Instead of having right now we have a very active public comment, which is awesome. The difficulty is there's individuals versus groups, and that's where sometimes I think a group could actually state maybe their opinions more coordinatedly.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're asking a group of health professionals and policymaker recommendation people to talk together first so that they can speak with one voice? Because if there's ever been a time that 5 people in a room can't speak with one voice. I think we're at that point right now. So I'm struggling to understand, because obviously the opinions are quite varied, and so I don't know who you're thinking that would all speak the same opinion. We heard from multiple healthcare providers tonight who have very differing opinions, and so when you say speak with one voice, I'm not understanding how that would happen.
Well, I had a list of groups here that I proposed earlier. Jackson County Public Health, obviously the first one. The parent-teacher organizations, faith-based institutions, they could possibly, we have interfaith here as well. They may have an opinion as well. Parent groups, any kind of those, they could speak with one voice. The teachers and staff of the district, I would admit that it might be a little more difficult to have one voice on that. Local healthcare professionals, there is obviously 4 or 5 clinics in town that can speak on their behalf. And the parents themselves can actually also, I understand there'll probably be a couple of groups in that one, but at least it'll be easier to absorb the information as more of a concentrated effort versus just one individual speaking on behalf of all parents or all students and staff. I think that would be beneficial, that's all. I mean, I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be a quick to assemble kind of meeting, but it's something that we can possibly assemble in the future is what my plans were, or my intention was.
Could those groups simply get together, and if they have and speaking from, obviously, we're trying to get group consensus here, but if they could sit down and write that and submit it to the board, that seems to be a little easier, because I don't necessarily want to watch the PTO figure out what their stance is over a period of hours.
I understand what you're saying. I think it's something that has to be organized outside of the board meeting or the listening session itself, and they have to come up with a proposal of what they wish to speak about beforehand. I would think that would be a decorum that we need to have, yes.
Troy, what role do you see the district playing in this listening session?
I think everyone listed here has a stake in what's going on in the school district in various forms. This is our community, and right now the school district is a representative of that community, and therefore we should represent the viewpoints of, at least listen to the viewpoints of what they have. That's the purpose of it. I mean, unfortunately right now we're in a very difficult time and sometimes a difficult place, but at the same time, this is what we're elected to do, is listen to our constituents, so.
Do any of the board members feel they're not getting enough information?
I feel that this is the forum that we're getting a lot of the information. And if you have a group that wants to get together, they could come together as public comment and give their own statement. You know, they can share their time, or we could give them extra time. To me, that's the same thing that we've been doing right now.
But currently with the public comment rules, that doesn't compatible. So if we made something sort of exception, that would be fine. But right now, we have 4-minute snippets of people's input. And that's where I'm talking about 4 minutes maybe limited in order to understand what their viewpoint is.
If there's 4 people with 4 minutes, that's 16 minutes if they're a group. That possibly could work if we wanted to go that way.
I'm receiving, and as well as the rest of the board are receiving, lots of written comments as well, and calls and emails, and I really feel I have plenty of information to base my decisions on.
I would agree with that. We get a lot of written information before the board meetings, which I appreciate, because we can take the time to really review those if they're sent in ahead of time. Can you hear me without a microphone? No.
I said that right now I agree with what Mary Jo said. We get a lot of written information ahead of time, and I really do appreciate that because I have time to take a look at that information and research it a little bit, and I think that's the best way for me to receive the information right now.
Any other board members wish to weigh in, please?
I was just going to say, I'm not sure what would be substantively different at a listening session from what we're getting now. For example, PTO group, they're not going to agree necessarily amongst themselves what a stance would be. Our medical field doesn't necessarily agree, you know. So I feel like if they want to say something, if they have information they want to contribute, they are doing that. If we have an organization such as our local public health, they're able to submit that information or do a presentation, much like we have for, let's say, like the Gillingham thing we just saw tonight. So I don't know, I don't feel like a listening session is really going to change people's opinions on anything. I don't know, it feels a little bit like spinning your wheels. So that's just what I'm thinking right now.
To marry those two, try to get at your point, what if the board made a statement that said the board was interested in hearing from groups that have collective thoughts, and to Amy's point, they could ask to be on the agenda so that that group could talk, because I'm struggling as the person who is I talked to you about this individually, as a person who's gonna have to invite these people, I don't know how I would say, to use Amy's comment, PTO group, you guys all agree, and then come talk to us and speak with, I don't know how that would happen. And so perhaps it's more of an invitation that we have a public comment process, but if there's a group that has a presentation they'd like to share with the board, here's the process to make that happen. With that, it wouldn't necessarily be all those people on the same night, but it would still demonstrate that the board was interested in that possibility.
I think that'd be something that's a positive step, yes, exactly. Invite people to, I don't care. Basically, to invite people, that sounds like a reasonable compromise, yes. I think that would be fine. The rest of the board agrees.
I'm seeing a lot of heads shaking that that would be a way to go. Okay. Any more comments on the community COVID listening session discussion? Okay, we'll move on to accelerated labs.
Okay, so Jill, if you could put up 5.6, please. Thank you. Oh, chair's already on. So I have been sharing with the board since the school year started that there is a significant decline in the availability of COVID testing in our community. Many of the state's resources have been redirected to schools because the governor's proposal was that the best way to keep students in class more often is to provide access to rapid testing. And so, to be honest, we were incredibly distracted, consumed, whatever you want to say, about face coverings that we did not spend enough time talking as a full board about testing. And now we are at a place where we have somebody who needs a test, and they are waiting 3 days before they can find access to that. And so, both of our neighboring school districts are already working with accelerated labs. I just want to be very clear. Each district in the state had the opportunity to sign up for the possibility, and I'm going to say this about 80 times, optional testing. Parents opt in. There is zero testing happening without a parent saying, yes, please provide this service for my child. Optional. So, we all signed up saying we're interested. Accelerated Labs is the lab that was assigned to our region. So there are many other labs that are doing this exact same work throughout the rest of the state. Accelerated Labs is currently in Jackson County. They do 3 days a week at Melrose Medoro, 2 days a week at Alma Center, Humbird, Maryland. What I am requesting or recommending to the board, what the team is recommending, is that we allow Accelerated Labs to have space within our district for anybody who is interested in signing up for the optional testing. It is not just testing for the student, but any family member who would like to, that lives with that student, is also able to come in and be tested. We have right now sent some students to Alma Center and Melrose Medoro because that was the fastest route for them getting that quick test. Without getting into testing theory and strategy, I'm looking at Patty because she's talked to me so many times about these tests in the past, and I am not that medical expert. So this is my understanding. The antigen test is the rapid test. It is a screener. What we are proposing is the testing protocol to stay in school would be that if a student was identified as a close contact, we would call the parent and say, your child has been identified as a close contact. You may either come pick your child up to quarantine, or you may opt into this optional testing, and as long as your child tests negative on the antigen test, they may remain in school. The antigen protocol is every other day, so 3, 5, 7, 9. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't know about the close contact until we're contact tracing when we're already on day 8, but that antigen test is the first screener. If somebody takes the antigen test and they will get the verbal response from the testing company, Accelerated labs bring staff into our district. We don't test, we don't get results, we don't touch any of it. And our neighbors already have this happening, and they've assured me, Melrose Maduro, they have 4 accelerated labs technicians that come, they do all of it. The district does not get involved. At the end of the day, the district designee, I think it's their superintendent, gets a report of all the tests. Immediately upon completion, they get the family or student that's there gets a verbal, and an email is sent to whatever email address was registered as the testing site. Every other day that student is tested, they assured us that it is not the all the way up poking your brain, it is the lower nasal swab. They said older students often do the test by themselves. So Accelerated Labs takes care of that, not any staff members. If a student tests positive with the antigen test, they are then given a PCR test right there by Accelerated Labs, and because that first screener was positive, they do need to go home. If that PCR test comes back negative in a few days, they may rejoin school. If that comes back positive, then they are isolated as a positive COVID case. So our intention with this is providing an optional service to our community. I know the board has received some communication from some community members that have had to drive quite a distance to try to access testing for their students. So it's free of charge, it's completely optional, and they do all of the work. We are talking about doing it at Red Creek because they talked about wanting to have a drive-up possibility, and so they said that they would go test family members in the car if that's what they needed to do. What the current thinking is that Melrose Maduro, who currently has it 3 days a week, they would go to 5 days a week for half days, and Black River Falls would get that same Accelerated Lab staff for half days, 5 days a week as well. Optional, free of charge service people can take advantage of. Nobody is required to use it.
I did have a question about, on the materials that we were provided, there were different kinds of testing protocols that we could, I guess, join. Event testing or screening. Are we interested in those, or just screening people that are testing when people have symptoms or have been close contact?
I'm so sorry.
Okay. When in our packet, there were different types of testing. There was screening and there was event testing. From what I'm hearing, we're not interested in those things, just...
You're absolutely correct. And so there are some districts that before their homecoming dance, they're doing a screener antigen. We are not suggesting that. There are, we talked last time about the field trips, that there were some field trips that were requiring a negative test before students can participate, like the Dorian Festival. We said that we were going to, our students would have to comply with that if it was somebody else's requirement to participate in their event, but that we were not interested in doing that kind of screening. It was the stay in school protocol testing instead of quarantine. That being said, if you are symptomatic, you also could register for this and make an appointment. It doesn't have to be just because we said you're quarantined. Anybody who is symptomatic, staff or students or families of students, would also have free access to that testing, whether they're in fear of being quarantined or not. So,
but not the general public.
So it is meant to be for schools. However, both Alma Center and Melrose Maduro have said that people have come in and said, you know, my nephew goes to school here, but I'm symptomatic, would really love to get back to work. Can I get tested? And they have not turned them away. So Troy has a presentation that he would like to share with the group.
Before I get to that, actually, there is a board provided material. There was an accelerated lab testing algorithm that was provided. Is that going to change what from the August of last year's COVID protocols for screening children or students, I should say? Because it is a dramatic change in many ways.
Absolutely, and so this is if they choose to test. So the other protocol that you're talking about was the exclusion protocol from school, that if they're deemed to be a close contact. So that protocol determines whether they are identified as a close contact or whether they're symptomatic. The difference with this, Jill, do you want to pull up 6.6.4? The difference with this protocol would be somebody who says, I would like to test out of quarantine, then this gets started. So again, you've been identified as close contact. We call the parent and say, your child's been identified as close contact, exactly like we currently do. And now we're going to say, if you'd like to come pick your child up in quarantine, here's the dates that they'd be eligible for return. Or if you would like to participate in the accelerated lab testing algorithm, here's what that looks like.
Well, my question was the antigen test. Sorry. It says released, if you're up for the antigen test, released from quarantine if past day 7. May not test earlier than day 6. Is that something I'm misreading or misunderstanding?
So this document is for, release from quarantine. Right now, we have, if you recall, we shortened our quarantine period from the 14 days to the 11 days. We try to, most kids in the school most of the time. And so according to that, whether they are doing the testing to stay in school protocol, they can right now, if somebody is quarantined on day 6 or after, they can get a test and then can return on day 7. If they choose to not test, they can come back on day 11. So it's possible that there might be students that say, I don't want to get tested every other day, I'll go home for the first 6 days and then I can test and return back on day 7. So this was created when Melrose Mindoro and Alma Center were not doing the testing protocol to stay in school. This was when they did on-site testing. Melrose Mindoro has not yet approved the testing to stay in school protocol that other document just showed. They are doing this right here. Alma Center last Monday night approved the testing to stay in school protocol. They are just waiting for Accelerated Lab to tell them when they are going to have the staff to be able to man it 5 days a week. So this is on-site testing outside of the testing to stay in school. Those are kind of 2 different programs, all done by Accelerated Lab.
So just so I want to fully understand it, if students are called a close contact in a classroom, they have the option of just immediately testing and getting a negative, and every other day being retested. That's what I just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
And then, or this, they can say, I don't want to test every other day, but on day 6, I'm happy to come in and get tested, and then could return on day 7. If I don't want any testing, I return on day 11, as long as I'm asymptomatic.
Does any other board members have any comments or questions?
I have a presentation if I could put that up there now.
He's got a presentation.
Oh, your presentation? Okay, I'm sorry.
It was not included in the board packet ahead of time. I just added it to the Google Drive this evening.
Yeah, sorry for the short notice. It was something that I intended to just make a simple document last week, and then it became a PowerPoint, just had more time. So, my question was basically the quarantines and how they affect our student success here. So, this is a question that's rhetorical. What are the effects of quarantine, and what does it say? What does the district mission statement and educational philosophy say about our current situation? Can we go to the next one, Jill, please? Right now, I think we have a lot of testing going on, and COVID has brought a lot of unintended consequences. And so, what is our long-term goal of this testing, is my question. Are we doing this to ensure some safety and compliance, or compliance? Why does an outside company, not local to the district, get to come and test for our students for a fee? I understand that the state did dictate who we use, but is there other options where we can use that same pay structure and pay our local clinicians?
We're not paying anyone, just to be clear. We're not paying anyone.
The state is allocating money directly to Accelerated Labs at our request. Is that correct?
If we don't use the testing company assigned to us, we get $0. So it's not like we've got money and we get to decide where to park it. We get $0.
So we have zero control of how this operates.
Correct. I would guess that I could reject them and ask for someone else, but I guess I would pose the question, why?
To keep money, to keep our school district dollars local, like we do with when we try to do any kind of referendum agreement or anything like that, or anything else. When we try to buy local, just like we do anywhere else to support our community. We have several clinics in this town that we can actually benefit from testing. And right now, some of the reasons for access to testing is because they charge money to get tested, and therefore students are not being able to come back to school earlier than their quarantine period because of lack of availability of testing. If there was a financial benefit to the student that can go to any choice of the local clinician, provider, whatever you want to call it, and get tested, there's an option there. I don't know, like I said, I don't know the details, but it's just something that's a question. Some is rhetorical.
Just to be clear, that's a state program, and if you would like our option to be able to take our testing dollars and put them where we want them, you would need to lobby at the state level, because that is not a choice that we were given. And you've heard that there is a lack of testing availability of our medical facilities right now, and public health has said the same. They've lost their Wednesday National Guard testing, just to be clear. So that advocacy belongs at the state level at this point.
Yeah, I still think it's something we can acquire, possibly, but that's something I can do on my own too. And then the last part was, why the change from one negative test to multiple negative tests? That is something that they're proposing that I don't understand why we must comply with. Is that something that the county is setting up, or is that something that Accelerated Labs has done?
It's timing. And so the day 6 test is because they've already been home, and so you've been quarantined on whatever day we identify you as a close contact, you've been home. If you get tested on day 6, you can return starting on day 7. If the minute we say you are a close contact and need to quarantine, if you can show us evidence through a rapid antigen test that you are negative, you don't have to go home at all. So it's not an either or, it's an and, I guess. You know, either you're testing to stay in school protocol, which was the first document, or you're going to agree to quarantine and choose to come back on day 7 with a negative test, or wait until day 11.
Could you go to the next slide, please? It's not a comprehensive list. I am well aware of this. I had only some limited resources, but basically, right now, this is a list of some of the districts that have a mask mandate, and they have Blair Taylor's there, doesn't show a sticker on it, but basically they have a halfway mandate that they have elementary students are required to mask, where high schoolers are not. It's a mask option for them. And also, as we know, some of the surrounding counties, some of the surrounding areas too, Arcadia, Whitehall, and Toma are all mask optional as well. And the reason I bring this up is because there is other schools doing other things, and so I think it's worthwhile to take a look at what's going on in those schools and at least compare that. Some of those schools are smaller, some of those are bigger, but it's something that we can look at as a whole. And so the other lesson to look at too was the county data here is in our county, all 3 of our school districts are mask mandated. In Monroe County, it's split. In Trempealeau County, it's split. I'm not sure if that means something to do with the county health departments, or is that something that's more about people's comfort levels? I'm not sure. Just an observation I wanted to show on that one. And the next slide, there was some data. This is from last week. I apologize, I don't have this updated today, but basically some that's hard to read. What this was percent of transmission throughout the school district population. That's not just the school itself, that's the entire population that lives inside the school district boundaries. As far as Jackson County as a whole, it was, as of 9/17, was 0.338%. That is transmission ability. That has nothing to do with anything but testing of positive cases per the unit of, per the total population. Black Bear Falls had 0.27. Almost Center was a little bit higher at 0.62. But where it gets interesting is if you go down to Blair Taylor, was 0.67, and then Whitehall, a much smaller community, the numbers are there, 5,000 people, is 0.24, but they are mask optional. Arcadia, again a little smaller, 14 out of 5,673, 0.25%. And Neilsville, which as I understand, that it's hard to get the information sometimes, they are also mask optional, and they are 0.29%. And lastly was Toma, which was been mask optional since the beginning of the year. Their transmission ability has been, which is a larger district than ours, at 0.32%. And so it's just interesting to look at the numbers, because we hear everybody has a factor figure, but these are just taken right from the Jackson County, or actually, sorry, the state DPI website, COVID website, that shows every county, every municipality, and every school district, and these numbers are pulled right from those dates, and that's where they came from. So there's no doctoring of anything, this is just straight up numbers. And it's just something I think we should take a look at. Sorry, next slide here. And basically this slide here basically just kind of tells what I talked about on the left-hand side there was the quarantine. The reason given for the quarantine is because the CDC recommends these things, and so the fact is that we're taking healthy, asymptomatic, well, healthy is questionable, asymptomatic students and taking them out of school doesn't seem to be a good result that we want to have for student success. And so the second part of this is we just had the CDC just changed their recommendations on masking. And the masking now is more stringent than it has been. And so what it's done is it's caused, unfortunately, a lot of more resources we can use for staff and for students' compliance with the new mask mandate. And it's also affected here in the board meeting as well. the fact that we're actually using the sheriff deputy department right now, or the SRO, for some enforcement, tells you what's going on right now. So why are we, basically, what part of the thing is, this is causing increased resources necessary just to accomplish some quarantining and some mask compliance. There's those two parts of that. And then we go to the next slide, and I think Shelley has actually addressed this a little bit tonight, but basically, what we were just instructed here when the board did decide that we were going to go mask mandated, we were going to have more kids and more seats. And as of right now, I don't see that happening because we're taking entire classrooms of close contact students, admittedly, and we're taking them and quarantining. I don't see how we can have a mask and quarantine for maybe these younger students. Maybe we should amend or look at the policy another way, because right now we're taking and doing the same thing we did last year. We're moving entire classrooms outside the quarantine and forcing the test to return.
If I may just address that, Troy.
Sure.
So at the high school and middle school level, when we've had a positive case, the average number of students that have been quarantined has been 5 or less, probably even less at the high school, because we do have some vaccinated individuals who are not quarantined. At the youngest levels, which is where we've had to send full classrooms home, I contact traced the second grade myself, and we ended up with 8 students needing to be quarantined. When you get to kindergarten, those kids are all over each other all day in that classroom space. And so when the teacher, we say, give us your best estimate of who's inside that 3-foot bubble for 15 minutes or more. And because of the many interactions and the different stations and kindergarten is a new activity every couple minutes, at the youngest levels, we do end up quarantining larger groups, but that is simply a function of how they're educated, not because we're trying to send home more students than we need to.
I don't think it's clearly the intention of sending children home. I think it's the policies that we've in place have actually, that is the unintended consequence of it. And also then I would add rhetorically, if we're requiring kindergarten to mask that it doesn't comply with necessarily quarantine, then why are we doing one or the other? If masks are effective for them, why are we quarantining? If quarantine is effective, why are we masking them? For the younger students, they're not without 3-foot separation. It's just a thought to think about when we're talking about testing here. And that's all this is, just so we all understand, this all goes ties back to testing, because all these factors in the testing is why we're here is because of COVID mitigation, which is masking, which is quarantining, and therefore testing is also a large part of it. That's why I asked to be in this part of the meeting. And then I think to the next tab, actually, the next slide is what you shared earlier, and that actually talks about the grade level of quarantine students, and you are correct, the kindergarten and the 4K actually, or the first grade is actually the highest number. But we also did have a total of 31 in high school altogether, because high school has a unique thing of sports. We have a lot of students that are close to each other on outside of the classroom, so it's another consideration too, is when we do this quarantining, we can end up quarantining a large number of a team or any kind of a single sport in this, with our current quarantine, because close contact does happen in sports, most sports. And then the next slide was, that was the exclusion protocol, and you did touch on that, I appreciate that. And so it says right here that right now that says 14 days, but we have amended that, and I don't have the amended version to look at.
We didn't share this out this year, that is still from last year. We did not reshare this graphic this year.
Okay, so our COVID exclusion protocol is different than this now.
Correct. Last year, this document was shared with families one time, and then it was used internally for our contact tracing purposes. Okay. We have letters that have all the dates and numbers and all of that stuff that we share with families if their student is impacted by this. Okay, so in other words, we're not worried, so this is no longer relevant, so I can skip this tab. Thank you. Well, the symptoms and stuff are still relevant. So I mean, that part, the 14 days is not what we're using. The symptoms are definitely still relevant. I mean, the general concept is still certainly, okay. We just didn't republish it this year.
We don't have a graphic for we don't have a graphic for people to follow, students or parents to follow that correctly. Is that, was that correct? Okay. All right. And so the next tab, if we can go to the next one. What's going on with this tab is basically what we've been alluding to the whole time is basically the more we do all these processes, the more we end up having a self-perpetuating issue where we test, we find more possibility of positives, and then we start quarantining more, and then this can accelerate pretty quickly without any intention. So The difficulty is a single positive can have a large effect on our school right now, where we can quarantine a lot of students, and that makes it really difficult. And so it's something to consider that if we're going to bring in more and more testing to do more and more students, it can just continue on. And so the question is, where do we end this? Because right now it's making it difficult, I think, for some students to learn, that's all. And let's see, the next tab is tab 10, which basically the CDC guidelines are optional for us to follow as a board and as a school district. The administrator, administration can choose its own mitigation options without notice, can change them. If a positive case occurs, a student or faculty member could be sent home to recover and return when they are healthy. No local health care facility denies testing for a patient with symptoms, and I'm 99% sure that if you have a symptom, they're going to test you. Anyone who falls ill should immediately seek medical advice and be excused from school. And the whole point was this: no one needs to be quarantined or forced to have testing in order to continue to work or school is an option. Right now, the quarantine policy is, but that is something that the CDC does not, or there's no law that says this, I should say. There's recommendations that say that, but not a law. And if you go to the next slide there, basically, this is actually alluded to earlier tonight, but school protocol policy says everything in here, you can read it for ourselves. But basically, we have an obligation to help the students achieve the greatest potential. And removing students from classrooms is definitely contrary to that philosophy. And the last part of this was, my last tab was, the administration is not considering all options to maximize learning. Quarantining and masks do not seem to allow the original goals of in-school instruction to happen for all students. The guidelines are not a requirement. They can be amended, altered, or disregarded completely. Many other local districts have chosen a strategy that better accommodates their district's needs. Forcing kids without symptoms to be tested in order to return to school may be in violation of their right to an education. The board is responsible for all student access to all educational resources that the district offers. Virtual learning is not a viable option for most students. The safety of students is a noble concern, but it should not be forcing the students to be removed from learning. Safety starts at home. School students, parents, and guardians should be able to make the determination how to mitigate health concerns for their own children. Choosing to discriminate based on the potential medical condition of others is in direct conflict with individual rights and should not be allowed to continue. Asymmetric students and staff have a right to attend and work in the Black River Falls School District without testing or being forced to quarantine. That tab says a lot, I understand that. My last comment was, is there any other options? Is there only one path for the board to choose? And where does this end? I don't see the end of the sight right now. That makes it difficult. And that's, the last part was the concept of including everyone in as much as possible seems to be contrary sometimes when we move students from the classroom. And that's all I have to say about that. I just wanted to thank you for your guys' time. Much appreciated for listening. Thank you again.
Does anyone else have a comment about accelerated labs?
I just wanted to kind of reiterate something that Shelley had mentioned when she was talking about this, and that's that there are parents, like I can think of somebody specifically who was lamenting the fact that their high school student was in their third session of quarantining, and there was nowhere in town they could get a test without it being $155, or going out of town, such as Warren's or something, where they could get the test. And so I think there are parents who definitely would appreciate the convenience of having something right here in town that they're not gonna have to continually be paying for, because that can be prohibitive for many families to go to the clinic and pay $155 to get a test immediately, so that their kid can stay in school. Because it is a great challenge to learning to continually miss multiple days of school.
And Amy, I would agree with what you just said, and along with that, it will be easier for parents and close contacts of those students to be able to get those tests. We had letters from people that said they cannot find tests to get their child back in, so I see it as a positive addition to our school district at this point.
And I want to address your point, Troy, about CDC guidelines are just that, guidelines, they're not mandates. And unless this has changed in the last week or so, Shelley, this is not what CDC is recommending, but this is what districts are doing.
The testing to stay in school.
Test to stay in school is not the CDC recommendation, nor, as I understand it, is it Jackson County Health's recommendation. However, as I understand it, this is a concession that both entities are willing to make to allow us to let students back in school.
I agree with that.
As a board, we all agree we want our kids in school as much as possible. And as everyone says, we've received a lot of information on this and personal stories from parents that it would make it easier. We're about reducing our life loads for our parents too. There's a lot going on with everybody that have to take off work to run out of town to get a test. And I sure see this as a win-win situation.
And that brings up a question, so Shelley, so we're going to talk about offering this at Red Creek. So we have some non-drivers in the other schools. Are we going to be able to supply transportation for them?
So we are not going to provide shuttle, partially because parents have to give permission each time the child is tested, right? And so we had a conversation today with the team that, so you use the high school example, but let's use a Forest Street example. The staff doesn't want to be in that position, particularly in this current environment, to bring a kid over for a test, and then maybe the kid goes home and shares that the teacher made him get tested. We just don't want any confusion. And so for younger kids, we would still expect the parent to bring the child in for the test, because if it is positive, they would still have to take them home. High school students, we anticipate that the parent will be able to do the registration online. They can decide if their kid is gonna drive, or they do the testing. They'll start at 7 a.m. so parents could swing by on their way to work in the morning if that's what they prefer. It would be very difficult for us to provide a shuttle each day to, when we're unsure how many are going to use it. So we would still rely on the parents for some of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any more comments about
When
this?
would that begin? Soon?
So Accelerated Labs is waiting for your green light. We've met with them, we've done a lot of the pre-work, but they were waiting for authority to move forward. I would guess in the next 2 weeks, but many of the buildings have already started sharing that community members can go to Melman or Alma Center. And so I'm hopeful that it won't be that much startup, because we know that they're already at the neighbors a couple days a week. And so I'm hoping within 2 weeks, but I can't guarantee that.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the accelerated lab testing?
I'll make the motion to accept accelerated labs plan for our school.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed?
No.
Any abstain? Okay. Motion carried. We will move on to our CNI report. Dr. Sullivan.
Okay, get better at this stuff. Vicki Kramer will be joining me again. So for the curriculum and instruction report, I am excited to share information with you about the updates that we have been making to our MLSS system, which is our multi-level systems of support. So this is a process with the vision of all students achieving higher levels of both academic and behavioral success. The board packet includes a timeline of the work that has been done so far. The key to the work has been investing in our people. We've hired instructional coaches in each building to support our Tier 1 or core instruction. We've restructured our target time for Tier 2 instruction to make it more targeted, and added regular progress monitoring so that we can be responsive to the students. And finally, we've added interventionists to provide an additional layer for our students in need of the most intensive supports. So you'll see in the timeline that we've planned for professional development and PLC support for this group of professionals. We have further invested in our people by providing professional development and specific programming and instructional strategies for math and literacy to empower our teachers to reach the needs of all of our students. In K-8, this has meant targeting skills during target time based on assessment of students' needs. We're working on building supports
within the course offerings at the high school, which will enhance functional learning in both literacy and math.
The vision for these multiple levels of supports is for the elements of high-quality instruction, balanced assessment, use of data, and collaboration to systematically interact to create success for all students. Another visual that we've added to for your review
If you'd scroll down, yeah. Thank you.
is the literacy framework for assessment and instruction, because it clearly shows the progression of skill development and structured literacy that all readers go through, moving from left to right. In setting up our Tier 2 interventions, and of course our core, our goal is to close gaps in foundational skills in a systematic way. So we've selected evidence-based interventions and strategies and trained our teachers within each area. The area of math looks a little bit different because it has more distinct domains of skills such as algebraic thinking, measurement, and geometry. However, they all rely on a strong foundation in numeracy, so we focused our math interventions in that area. In conclusion, our goal is to build a strong collaborative system that will positively impact all of our students. We would like to thank you, thank our district leadership, our teachers, and our paraprofessionals for their contributions to this ongoing and important work. Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions for Dr. Sullivan or Ms. Quayman?
I'm excited about the work that you're doing. When will we first get any test results to see how it is impacting our students?
Great question. So there's different ways of looking at that assessment. I'm assuming that we'll start to see results on our iReady scores for our younger students right away. We can also see that through the work that we're doing in DIBELS more quickly, would be the primary way we'll see it, but we're also progress monitoring within each program as we move forward. So if there isn't growth showing up right away, we can take action and adjust our instruction and what we're doing.
And so she has a timeline, and so when do those assessments happen? When can the board expect to see a report? So calendar time.
Sorry.
That's okay. So we are in the process of doing our first round of universal screeners right now, and so this will show us what, if any, summer learning loss there was, because as you recall, we had some very positive results last spring. So very soon we will have that next round of iReady data for the fall, but that assessment is given 3 times a year. So from this time, then in January it is retaken, so that would be our first opportunity for growth within the year, and then again to spring, so January to spring. Is that what you were looking?
Yes, I'm excited.
Us too.
Thank you. The next on the agenda are the meeting minutes that were in your packet. There was one change that I made just with a motion, and I think that was corrected. Okay.
I make a
Anything you
motion.
want pulled out? Is there a motion to approve the meeting in your packet?
So moved.
Can we discuss the motion, the meetings, what minutes are looking from, what meeting was it again? I can't find it.
It was a meeting where it was just stated that Mary Jo had made a motion, but there wasn't any second on it. What was the date on that, Marty? It was probably.
I apologize.
Boy, I don't remember offhand.
It was in the packet from last week.
August 23rd.
Yes.
Yeah, if I saw the minutes, I could recognize them, but I.
That was a special board meeting. August 23rd was a special board meeting.
Yeah, I missed the second of the motion.
Was actually August 23rd. Here it is, found it. The comment on the meeting minutes that say community members were asked to comply with the district's COVID protocol and wear a mask during a meeting. Some refused to comply. I think it's a little extraneous in our reading data. There is this, I don't have the state law, but basically it's best to support just the facts that were there. And basically that, I think it's fine to talk about people we're talking about, or public input about wearing a mask, but I don't know if it's appropriate to put in there in our log that people were not refused to comply.
Could you help Which meeting are you at, Troy?
I'm sorry, this is the August
It's on,
23rd. August 23rd, I apologize.
Okay.
It is the meeting on the minutes, August 23rd, that's, I believe, what we're approving right now. Am I correct in that?
So we do all of them. Usually we just do one consent for all of the meeting minutes, and so we can certainly pull out whatever your pleasure. I just was not following at first.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. So, so you want the notes taken out above the at 6:05 p.m.
I guess, are we looking at the same one? I guess.
Right here,
Okay.
right here.
Okay.
So board members absent.
Yes, sorry, yes, that part of that statement is struck with 2 sentences, and that would be fine after that.
The community
Right here,
members were
community
asked to
members.
comply.
Yes, yeah,
That part.
that part, yep.
And the reason being you don't think it's
Because-
necessary, or that you didn't think it happened? I'm confused.
It's not about if it happened or not, it's about how we record public input. If you say public commented on certain subjects and certain subjects, but you say public commented and did not comply, that's extraneous information in meetings. And if you look at the statute for meetings, basically you just really want facts. You don't want to have extraneous information about opinion or any kind of, it's basically, there is a statute on that. I do apologize not for having it in front of me right now. Anyway, so, but man, if we go ahead and just strike even several refuse to comply, I don't mind that either. It's just basically, it puts an adversarial component that's going to be recorded forever in a meeting. That's all.
Do we pull out just the August 23rd, approve the rest, and hold the August 23rd until our next regularly scheduled meeting? And then give Troy, that will give you time to.
Okay, so table this meeting moment right here. This is meeting notes right here. The agenda.
I think it is a direct record of what happened and why we weren't following the agenda right then.
But if he wants to look up the statute, there's no harm in that.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
If that would be acceptable as a board, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, okay, so we,
Comment from our attorney.
Do you want me to comment on the meeting minute statute?
Please.
sure, thank you.
Hi, I'm your school district legal counsel, Shayna Lewis.
Sure.
The statute is that governs meeting minutes for school boards provides for the minimum amount of information that is contained within a school board meeting, a record of the meeting. And it says at a minimum, you need to record the proceedings of the meeting. Proceedings would be the actions taken, the people present who are there to actually preside over the meeting or provide information related to the meeting. There are many school districts across the state, I work with nearly 50 of them across the state directly, that provide very detailed minutes, almost a transcript of what happens at the meeting. There are other districts that have very sparse minutes in the sense that they only record the actions taken. It's my understanding from working with your district for quite some time that you guys fall a little bit in the middle, that your meeting minutes are not specifically restricted to the proceedings, but you don't go so far as to have a transcript. To the extent that this happened, and a majority of the board wants it recorded for posterity, if you will, for the ability to look back and say, why did things happen a certain way, and why did we not follow the agenda that was posted, that certainly could be helpful. From my perspective, I don't know that it could be harmful in any way if it did in fact happen, and I wasn't here, so I can't speak on that. Is that helpful?
So we will approve the minutes that excluding the August 23rd, and we'll revisit that. Is that correct, what everyone is thinking would happen?
If that's possible, I'd be fine. If not, sorry.
After our attorney just clarified that, I'm not sure why we can't vote on this on the 23rd minutes right now. That is not opinion, that is exactly what happened.
Troy, do you have?
Make a motion. Rachel, did you make a motion?
She did make a motion, yes.
I did, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you did make a motion.
I did make a motion.
You did make a motion.
It has not been seconded,
Right.
and now we're having discussion, so just.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes as presented. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Abstained. Motion carried. Thank you. We'll move on to Dr. Stevenson's report.
I have no new information to share, thank you.
WASB report, in-person regional meetings begin across the state tomorrow, and our regional meeting is October 28th. And if you're interested in attending that, you can sure sign up with Marty, and we'll figure all that out as it gets closer. School board connection opportunities, I guess we had the groundbreaking. Anyone else have anything else to report?
I attended the standards-based grading group. A lot of new faces in there this year, which is great. A lot more input that way. We just basically reviewed previous year's work and are ready to get started.
There is a roadside cleanup on Wednesday. Reminder, if anyone can make it, I'm going to try and slip out for it.
Where is that road? Is that the one out?
Yeah, we're meeting at Jackson.
Karen DeBerg has organized that for the district for so many years, yes.
And also, we probably should publicly recognize the PBS reporting labs. I did watch that on
absolutely, yes.
That was great, where they had Mela Ingebretson interviewed, let's see, Miguel Cardona, who is the U.S. Secretary of Education, and they cited Black River Falls School District, so I think that was great.
Yes, I was at a meeting, Zoom meeting today with the state, and they commented to me on how they enjoyed that piece that was on PBS. Anything else?
I will be going in to read to a couple classes this next week, so.
Nice. At this time, I make a motion that the school board adjourn to closed session for Wisconsin statute 19.85, paren 1, paren C, for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically professional staff employment.
Do we skip over 11? Because I actually wanted to bring that up. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
Thank you. I'd just like to, if we could actually put this proclamation on a future board agenda.
Oh, okay, yes, okay.
Thank you. That's all it was.
Okay, thank you.
This proclamation for parental rights. This is not something we get to see. Yes. No problem.
I've got it in my notes, right?
Yeah, and everyone got a copy. Okay. Okay, I'm going to take a roll call vote for a closed session. Yes or no? Brad Dodd.
Yes.
Amy Hoffman.
Yes.
Tom Epps.
Yes.
Ann Deemer.
Yes.
Troy Webb.
Yes.
Mary Jo Radcliffe.
Yes.
Mary Jo Rasmanowski, yes. Okay, we are in closed session. Thank you everyone for coming tonight.